Oh, yeah, boy, yeah, boy, yeah, boy. Ah, yeah, I'm just not feeling it at all today. It is definitely Monday, people. Definitely, definitely Monday. Definitely freaking Monday. Okay, all right, let me get this all. Generally, people, I suppose, do this before they start streaming. I being so damn spontaneous. Oh, good morning, everybody. How is everybody? I see Brian Vines. Hello, Brian. How are you, Brian? Oh my God. Good morning, dear indeed. Old Diddy. That's what I am. I'm an old freaking man, Brian. Hello, Soma. Hello, interwebs. Hello, Joe and Savannah and Shari. I see Mary Lou and Candace and Marcos and Amanda. I see Simon. Yeah, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's miserable. That's just miserable. I mean, there's just no way around it. I mean, I keep thinking it's gonna get easier. That I'm gonna be like, oh, I can't. I just like can't start my day without the exercise now. I would rather, I would rather clean the public toilets in, you know, in a small Russian, prison camp than or a giant prison camp than exercise every morning. It's freaking it's horrendous. Like are there people who like this? I mean, like these gym rats and stuff, these freaking fit bastards with their big muscles and their thick necks and everything. Do they enjoy this stuff? Because it's not fun. Anyways, all right. And there's your motivational speech for the day. Forget motivation. That's the other thing I can't stand is everything that goes along with exercise. It's like having a dog. All of a sudden, people think you want to talk to them about dogs and stuff. It's like, no, I have a dog. I'm walking a dog. Leave me alone. Just because I have a dog and I love my dog doesn't mean I love you and your dog. Same thing applies to kids. I don't understand this like clubby mentality of all this stuff. Oh God, I'm such a grump. I haven't taken my medication today yet, so that would probably explain a lot of things as well. But yeah, just really struggling with exercise. I just freaking hate it. Wow, you're a hospitaler from Czech Republic here. Oh wow. Well, look after yourself, my friend, and thank you. Are you familiar with the fantastic Josef Prusa out there, who's been very good about helping out people in that first responders and all? Meds, a million different freaking things. I got things from my heart, things from my head, things from my stomach. I like rattle when I walk at this point. I'm so freaking old and unfit. In fact, one of the things it says on my heart stuff is that if I have any significant change in exercise or diet, I'm not supposed to do any of that before I consult my doctor. And all I know is every time I see my doctor, he says, like, you could work out a little less like a 90-year-old and actually, act your age and do some proper exercise. So I'm convinced he just thinks I look much younger than I really am. That's what I tell myself anyways. Good morning, Blake. How are you? Interesting thing I mentioned, I think the reason why I mentioned prison camps in Russia was that I'm sort of watching and somewhat shocked that once again, America and Canada, maybe North America, I don't know what it's like in the European zone and the UK and stuff, not a lot of news about Russia right now. And I think it's quite significant that this opposition leader has been arrested again, and that there is so much unrest on the street. I mean, so much that there are reportings of this stuff happening, of people actually going out in the street to sort of like voice their disapproval for the for the way this is being handled and stuff. And it reminds me of the Russian hack, like when Russia hit SolarWinds, and then it was discovered that they were all over Microsoft and their source code and everything. Barnacles and Ox and I were saying how we were so surprised, actually, and James Key, so the guy I'm going to talk to tomorrow, the Crow Scratch writer, he was also very surprised that this wasn't a more significant thing in the world, because, I feel like at any other time in the world, any other time in history, this would be the leading story. I guess we're in a way, we're sort of like, I think we've been desensitized to political strife and to these extraordinary events. I mean, I said to my son the other day, I said, you realize that there will be at least an entire chapter on this, this part of history. At least there will be many books and many chapters in history books. I said, your kids, if you have kids, will be reading about this time and say, hey, Dad, what was that like? So I think it's an interesting thing. I mean, look again. I had a really interesting conversation with a father, the father of a friend of my son's who was Asian from China and was split his time between China and Canada. So he had a business that worked in China and in Canada, and he would go back and forth. I've since we stopped the swimming stuff, I've not been able to be in touch with him. In fact, I might have his email address. I should find him because really interesting, very smart, lovely guy to talk to. So we would sit there in this, in the boiling hot, uncomfortable pools while our kids did their lengths, and I would sort of talk to him about stuff. And one of the things I said was look, please, tell me about China, because I want to know. All I hear is the news and these stories of just all the horrific things that happen, and this, this mass and of people and political, and he sort of smiled and he said, look, that the political system in China, that there is corruption in the Chinese government system. And I was like, well, yeah, no, of course I've heard about that. And he goes, and there's corruption in the American system and the Canadian system. I was like, well, yeah, I mean, that's it's almost, we've become sort of, again, desensitized to this kind of stuff. I mean, we just expect, it's no big surprise when politicians do things that they shouldn't, basically at this point in our certainly in my life. And he said, so I think you just have to approach China the same way you approach the States. They both have their own agendas. The one thing that became very apparent in talking with him was that China doesn't think in terms of 4 years. So America thinks in terms of 4 years because that's the political. Every 4 years you've got your election, and the entire system seems to be geared towards what can you do in those 4 years to get the next 4 years. And each party sort of approaches things that way. So very, very short-term planning, basically, in the States, and to some extent in Canada as well, I think. Not to some extent, I'm sure in Canada as well. Because, again, it's just based on this political system. Whereas in China, they think in years of 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 500 years. I mean, because there's less focus on the individual and more on the system itself, they are able, for good and bad, obviously, to think very, very far ahead on stuff. They can get it wrong many, many times. I mean, God, look at the 5-year plan, and was it the Great Leap Forward? There was this whole thing where they were like, the birds were eating the plants, so they decided to get rid of all the plants. So they had the big thing. So we're eating the grain, so they said, we got to get rid of all these birds. So they had a big thing. They were ordered. Everyone had to go and kill as many of these birds as they could find. Well, the birds died, and they have a bug problem. And they have a bug problem. And then they started making lakes. There were the lakes, and then the lakes were polluted. And then they said, okay, instead of having these giant smelting factories, every village should have their own little full-time kiln going the whole time. So they made tons of pollution, and they made tons of really bad iron and stuff. So stuff didn't always work the way it was to plan, but it's a completely different way of thinking. And it always makes me think of trees, which is just a weird connection, but it always makes me think of what is it, if a tree could see, they would see these things buzzing around and crazy random arms waving and things happening and then keeling over and dying and getting faster and faster and faster with their information and their cars and their travel and all this kind of stuff. And they're just moving at a different pace. And I think again, I've said this before because I've had a couple, I went off the other day because somebody said, oh, you like a communist actor or something. And I'm sure they didn't mean, they were probably just a joke. It was probably just a joke, but it kind of triggered me because I feel like one of the biggest issues we have in this world is that we categorize and then we marginalize, basically. So we say oh, you're a communist. There is nothing you can contribute to this world because we don't believe in communism. Communism's not as bad. And while I'm not in any way a communist or even support that approach, I think what's important is that the right and the left and the middle and the environmentalists and the lobbyists and the oil companies and the solar companies, we all have to look at our competition, look at the people around us, and see what we can take from other ways of thinking about things, other approaches and stuff. Because I think to just completely dismiss things and different countries' approaches to things as just the wrong way of doing it, I think really weakens us. Like weakens us as a species, as the human race. This is kind of a new little thing for me recently, because I always, and by no ways am I in no way condoning like the appalling human rights situations in China and Russia and in other places around the world, or America, or Canada, where we have a ridiculously horrible situation where the way we treat our indigenous people here is extraordinarily horrible, and is absolutely, I think there are human rights issues there that could totally be raised by the various different indigenous groups here and communities and stuff. I mean, it's horrible. So point being is, I guess that I'm fascinated by places like Russia and China. I am interested in knowing how they think, in how they work, in what works and what doesn't work, because you can't deny some things work, some things they do work. At what cost is the question, obviously. Like, oh yeah, no, they can produce things amazingly cheap because they don't pay anybody. It's like, and the work conditions are of no concern to them, that kind of stuff. But I think if you sort of step back and almost take like a scientist approach to politics, I think that would be very, very useful. Just to be able to go like, okay, so this doesn't work, but what if we did this? Would this work? Or like, and I think just to dismiss it entirely is a grave mistake on our part. So, there are slave camps in China. There are, I mean, look at what happened after 9/11. I mean, America had operations all over the world where they were breaking human rights issues. And I mean, no, I think the reality is that any country, any large country in the world today, for the most part, has some serious issues with this stuff. And I think when you look at a large empire like the States or the UK or China or Russia, we have to be aware that we're only hearing the bad about our enemies, and our enemies are only hearing the bad about us. So this is a war of propaganda to a large extent. This is a media war. This is this is how we fight wars now. It's all online. It's all either through cyber espionage or cyber sabotage or whatever, all the cool stuff. But it's also just hearts and minds, right? I mean, I think that's a big part of it. So, anyways. Yes, you came in on an interesting subject. This is just sort of one of my recent sort of concerns. Is I feel like there tends to be there's this like damning everything Russian, damning everything Chinese, and I worry that in doing so we are isolating ourselves and are isolating our philosophies and our ability to change and adapt to a world that is, as we see, is like in just complete turmoil right now. So hopefully better. Hopefully things are improving now. We'll see. But I just think that's there you go. That's my little diatribe for the day. Let me look at some questions. What do we got? Wonderful day. I mean, so far a bit slow, I got to say, taking a while. Good morning. Quick question. What do you mean when you say biohacking? Megan, good question. It's kind of it's in the same way you talk about like, it used to be when you were like a hacker, a computer hacker, you were somebody who just enjoyed playing with computers and making them do things that perhaps they weren't meant to do. And in the same way, it's almost like a hobbyist. It's a hobbyist approach to computers. Like you could be an electronics hacker where you take lots of components and rebuild things and pull apart things and see how they work and all that. So that is my term when I think of hacking. It's now changed. It's become sort of a negative thing. But biohackers is basically about saying, hey, there's a fallacy that all of this technology, this biotech that's out there, has to be done in labs. It has to be done at universities and has to require huge amounts of money and stuff. And what people like Josiah Zayner and other David Ishii is another guy. A lot of these biohackers are out there saying like, hey, the materials they can be cheap. You can make your own little PCR machine for replicating DNA. You can do a lot of these experiments and these tests at home. So let's stop pretending that we can't, and let's start doing it. Instead of leaving all the research to big pharma, who then charge $1 million for gene therapy that could be done and have been done in a garage in Louisiana for $7,000. Let's open this stuff up. Let's play in a way. In the same way, I think Josiah, I mean, maybe I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what I see when I see him and his company called the Odin, which I absolutely love, by the way. I've just ordered a mushroom hacking kit basically from him there. So the biohacking that he's doing is basically saying like, when I was a kid, one of the things I loved the most in the world was the 150-in-1 electronics systems that you could buy from Radio Shack. So I'd go to Radio Shack, I saved up, I bought the 150-in-1, and then not only did I use the little, where you had little wires and you could cable things together with these little springy things, not only did I do that, I then pulled that apart and made things out of that. It's pure hacking joy. And I would buy books on electronics and ICs and integrated circuits and chips and things that I could play with. Oh my God, I loved it. In the same way that I loved that and did that, I think what Josiah and the biohacking movement promises us in the future is a world where a kid like me growing up will, instead of having a 150-in-1 electronics kit, could have a 151 biotech kit, where you change the DNA on yeast in order to make it glow in the dark, or you change a bacteria to produce different materials that you want. Obviously done in a safe and responsible way. But the reality is, all of this stuff is available for people who don't want to be responsible and who don't want to be, positive in their approach to this stuff. This could be done just as horribly, by people who don't want to do good things. But the reality is that I think if you pretend that doesn't exist, or you try to crack down on something as ridiculous as you can't stop people from buying yeast. You can't stop people from cultivating bacteria. I mean, I could go and I could wipe the inside of my mouth and put it on a Petri dish, and there's the horrible toxic things I'm sure that would show up, as it would anyone. But the whole point is that you can cultivate, you can do this stuff. So let's teach kids about it, how it works. So they can make up their own mind about how to use these things. Because I think if you educate kids early on that this is just another technology. I mean, this is why I want to include biotechnology, and I do sort of try to bring it up a lot with the Tech Bandits, is that this is a technology. It's nature's technology. These are nature's robots. We're nature's robots. I mean, so the idea that biohacking to me is the same as electronics was when I was growing up. So. And I think it's about at that stage. I feel like we're at the, maybe even just a little bit before, we're more like in the Apple stage, maybe. No, well, I say that, I don't know. I mean, the point being is I don't think we've actually formalized 151 electronic experiments in the form of biotech, if that makes sense. But there are people doing it, and there are people doing amazing things out there, and there are people who are just reveling in the joy of learning about how this crazy, complex, beautiful world around us works. And I think you're seeing a lot more of it because of, obviously, CRISPR, which allows us to not just, everyone always has these stories about how, oh my God, you can modify genetics and the mutants and freaks and superhumans. And then you get into the whole eugenics side of stuff where, well, we're going to start genetically removing people. And then everyone's going to be white with blue eyes. And oh my God, so there's a lot of those fears. They're justified in every way. But the point being is that I think we need to start teaching our kids about this stuff, start understanding it more. And I think COVID, in a way, has allowed us to do that because you've got CRISPR, you've got COVID. CRISPR is then basically used, the CRISPR technology is used in a way to create this RNA, which then creates these vaccines. This is a technology that is being used all the time. It needs to be taken out of the hands Like it used to be, in order to use computer time, you had to go to a big university and you had to like check in, and there were the acolytes, and there were only certain people were allowed access to the big giant machine that had all 250 kilobytes of memory and stuff, and everyone made up jargon and made it more complicated, and nerds didn't want to talk about it. Well, guess what? Biotech, that's where it is right now, and I think big industry would like to keep it there, whereas the biohackers want to say, hey, let's do something with this. Let's play with this stuff. Let's see what it can do. Some of them maybe do things that certainly James Gurney would freak out and hate in every way, and I understand that. There's definitely stuff that injecting themselves with things that people think might be irresponsible. But I think this is a part. I mean, this is a big part about freedom, right? I mean, this is one of the things that I think we need to. This is one of the advantages of where we live, is that we should be allowed to experiment with nature that is around us. And I think with obvious exceptions to things that could harm ourselves or other people. But again, trying to police this stuff, we also have to realize, how do you police this? Like, how do you stop people from doing bad things with biotech? Very difficult. I would say impossible. So better educate people so they get really good at it, so they can come up with countermeasures. They can come out with cures as opposed to causes. And I think that, and I see the kids get really excited about this stuff, possibly because of cartoons. I mean, comic books. When is the extra arm going to grow? When do I get my lizard abilities? When do I get to start climbing walls like a spider? And I love that as an in to getting them excited about actually doing this stuff. So I should definitely I'll do like a little Bio Bandits thing, because I think that would be fun to talk about, and maybe get some of these amazing folks in to talk about it, because it really is. What they're doing is extraordinary. So very, very long-winded explanation of biotech, of biohacking. There's a better word for it, I think. I think because of the connotations now, the unfortunate connotations with hacking, I think biohacking scares people. It's basically bioengineering. I mean, it's bio hobbyists. I don't know what the best term for it is. Bio nerds. I don't know. I mean, it's what do we call electronics enthusiasts? I mean, what were they? You know what I mean? What would they call an electronics enthusiast back in the day? A maker. So this is like a biomaker, basically. I mean, it's about coming up with ways to learn this stuff that'll get kids interested. Grassroots bioengineering. Yeah, that's a better way of putting it. Gardeners. Yeah, gardeners is a freaking. Oh my God, who is that? That's brilliant. That's really so. Virus 464. Gardeners. They're biohackers. We've been biohacking in the garden, and all those veggies you've been growing during the pandemic. You're a biohacker. Welcome to the community. Now come and do some cool stuff too. A sorcerer. Yes, exactly. Rocco Fillmore. They are, in fact, sorcerers. All right, I gotta go. I gotta go walk the dog because my poor wife is gone. She has to go to the eye doctor to get the drops in her eyes. So she says, well, if I can see, I'll walk the dog. I'm like, you know what? I'll handle this for you, honey. I don't want you walking off any bridges. So I will say a fair and adieu. I will say this, thetechbandits.com. I have to do that. Sorry, I'm in full promotion mode here. So thetechbandits.com, go visit, see what we're up to. There's a couple of new things there. Please sign up for the newsletter. I'd love to get more people in the newsletter. I've just made a terrible mistake. I just emailed the newsletter to everybody, including all of our Christmas list. Jane's very, very angry with me because all of her film business people have just got this thing about this big picture of a raccoon with Tech Bandits on it. I laughed, but she wasn't laughing so much. Anyway, so I kind of screwed that up. So go sign up for that, thetechbandits.com. Tuesday, I don't know why it's a second day, I guess. Tuesday, what did I call it? Writing Bandits. I'm trying out this writing thing. We're going to talk to a writer about writing. You can hear a few thoughts from me. But first to sneeze. Sneeze. Second sneeze. 2 sneezes for you. That's 4. So Writing Bandits tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to do it on Twitch, I think, just because I'd love to do it here, but I feel like I haven't quite got this figured out from a computer standpoint. So let me go with banditry on Twitch for tomorrow. So tomorrow, it's twitch.tv/tech banditry. But if you go to thetechbandits.com, you can find all that stuff. Oh my God, I'm just going on and on and on. All right, I must go. I must have my coffee. I must walk my dog. I will say be brave, be kind, be safe, be brilliant, and I'll see you later. Cheers. Bye.